Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. It's your boy, and I'm here with Zach. Once again, what's good, Zach?
How you doing, baby girl?
This guy. Man, it's been a long day, but we're here.
Yeah,
We're
I
here, and
feel
we're
it.
ready to talk about something special. Before we get into the topic, um, let's do a little speed round. Are there any things that popped up, or any movie news, any film news you want to talk about that's happened during the week, or in general?
Besides the writer's strike,
If you want to get into the writer's strike, we can get into
it's whack.
it.
You know what I mean?
Think the writers what they're asking for is unreasonable?
No, I'm
Of
just
course not.
saying, just no. We've been through this song and dance before, right? And then they
Right.
ultimately cave because the content that comes out in this period of time, God forbid it lasts any longer than what it is. It's not like the movie industry or the TV industry is lacking money. They're making tons of money.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not like it's that. It just comes down to how are the writers valued. And I think I think when you take something for granted for so long and then you realize, you know what, we don't know what the actual value of this is until it's gone, then they're like, okay, let's play ball. What do you
Right.
think?
I feel the same way. I think what the writers are asking for is just simply, treat me like a human being, and
Hmm.
these I don't know, whenever these big companies have a chance, they'll try to find a way to screw over the little guy. And with the whole microcosm of streaming changing now, because there's a fog of war, basically. This is a new technology. This is a new way to watch content. The execs are trying to take advantage. They're basically trying to make these people work for free or work for pennies and peanuts, and it's
In
ridiculous.
relative terms of how everyone else in the film or project's paid, let's just make that clear.
Right, right, exactly. And then on top of that, this is what I heard. I don't know if this is true. Obviously I'm not in the industry. I heard that the writer one of the things that the writers was like, from now on, we know this is new technology with things like Chat GPT,
Yeah.
but we want these things to be written by humans. And I heard the studio flat out said no.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
I
you got to
mean,
think of it. I mean, look, you know, the industry I'm in now, the tech space, right? So I'm very, I guess, thrown off a little bit with how AI has just, it was like, it wasn't in our lives as much as it is now, but it's in our lives and it's like moving at the speed of light,
oh
and the
yeah,
versatility in terms of what you're able to do with it is remarkable. And it's only going to get better, right? Especially with the natural learning machines that's coming through it. So, I mean, at some point, when are you actually going to need someone who's going to set the tone for the scene?
I mean, I was in a meeting with a bunch of business people. They were like entrepreneurs and stuff, and they were talking about, oh, this is great for our business. We can use this. Then the writer's strike came up, and they were talking about, oh, these people are about to be obsolete. They're stupid. They don't know what they're doing. Why they're trying to argue when there's literally this free tool or this free thing out there that can do anything. Um, I said,
But is it free though? That's the thing. Like, how long is it going to be free? Because if we're going to use it for this thing, right? Like, at some point, like, OpenAI is going to be like, all right,
subscription
so
based.
not just that, but like, you want to have it as proprietary type of software, kind of how you use Adobe. I'm like, look, one time, bam, that's it. And then you got to pay for the
Yeah,
license, and we can
subscription
revoke
based
that
stuff,
any
man.
time.
But
So
I had to point out to them, I was like, look, man, AI, yes, it can get to that point where it'll be able to write a script, no doubt. But for right now, it's still as good as the one who's using it. It's still like a tool, basically.
It's
You can,
supplementary, really. It's supposed to help you make it faster, speed up your process, so these writers
yeah,
aren't spending 2 years on a beach somewhere writing this stuff.
yeah, but it's like if you don't know what to tell it to do, it's still just a machine-based thing. So it's going to do exactly what you described it to do. If you don't know what to look for, if you don't know what a story needs, it's not going to come out right. And after the last writer strike that was around like '07, '08, you know, we can see that execs don't know what stories need. They don't know what these films need,
No.
and
They're
you
there for
know,
the money, dude. It's a completely different thing, and as a
yeah.
consumer who's not in the industry, right? I just want some good stuff to just get me out of the real world because the real world is like SpongeBob's fire. You know how like in that episode where he forgets his name, right? And
Mhm.
he's like the fancy waiter, and then he's like the only thing he knows is fine dining and breathing. And his head, where everything's on fire, he doesn't know his name. That's like how life is right now for a lot of people, And I'm not being hyperbolic. Like it's just so movies are meant to get away from that craziness, and instead you're just playing with fire. And like, do you really want to do what you did 15 years ago just to end up at the point what they're asking for right now, and then you create some kind of animosity? Like it's just not good business. I understand that you need to negotiate, you're in a power of strength and all that, but if COVID's taught us anything, you need content on demand, you need it fast, you need fast turnaround. Otherwise you're gonna be losing out. It's just how it is. Tell me
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
No. No, I mean, we've seen movies before where it was a writer strike. We've seen shows before and they just weren't good because execs were trying to be the writers and then they were like, just add more explosions, just add more CGI,
Dude, it's not the 70s where a cop show with a shootout's good enough. Like it doesn't work like that anymore. Like
Nah,
MacGyver with tube socks rolling through like electric lines. We need more. I mean,
we need
it's
more.
more than violence and sex scenes. I mean, I hate to break it to everyone, but even I just it is what it is. But that's just me.
Yeah,
I am.
because despite what people think, the audience is more sophisticated now. The audience now can pick out when something just doesn't work. And they're like, oh, I mean,
And
look at
there's
Doctor
immediate
Strange
feedback.
too, as opposed to
There's
everything all
immediate
at
feedback.
once. Yeah,
Yes, and it's
exactly.
blasted everywhere. Everyone could read it. It's not like there's a couple mediums or anything that you're like, oh, you get into paper, it's not such a big deal, big whoop. But no, it's like everywhere, man. It's you know, look
Do
here.
better.
I mean, I understand. Look, I'm all about saving money. Okay, love it. But if you're gonna screw someone in the meantime to do that, when ultimately your dollar is going to be stretched thin later on down the road, like I just don't think it's a good idea. But the thing that also bothers me besides this writer's strike that I want to get into it, what in God's green earth is Lucasfilms doing with all these Star Wars projects? Because
What else is new with
I don't
Lucasfilm?
know.
They just do this all the time, bro. They do this all the time. They're just, oh, let's announce a bunch of stuff coming out and let's attach these people to it. And then it's
I
like, come
need
on, bro.
You might as well just execute me if this is what we got to watch and look forward to. Like seriously, it's not fun because there's only so much nostalgia and I guess like pulling the heartstrings you can get away with. And the last trilogy was pretty much exemplified that, right? Where it was just nothing but that and callbacks to stuff from the 70s and 80s.
Beating
Like,
a
okay,
dead
fine,
horse, man.
whatever.
Just let him go. Let him be. New
Yeah,
saga, new
just do
characters.
another. You can do another Obi-Wan Part 2 thing, like, but other than that, just. And look, I love Hayden Christensen. Like how he reprised Darth Vader was perfect. I loved it, but it's like, come on. I think anything else now at this point, it's time to bring in some fresh blood, new
Yes.
storylines. It doesn't have
Characters,
be
new
Jedi's. Who
storylines.
cares? But just anything that's different. Like, look, you see how video games, right, as a medium, has changed people's interest on what they want, right? Like, look, I'll give you an example. Cal Kestis storyline, that's a huge line they can go through. They're probably doing it, right? But they need to make this sooner rather than later. And
Well, it's
there's a
not
big,
going to be soon.
probably, we don't know. You have no idea
With the
because this
writer's
thing,
strike, if even if they finish things in
this
a
could
few
already be
months,
done. they could have done this in tandem with the game. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, look, we're gonna do this at the
True.
same time. We're already here, and we'll release it, and that's that, and no one knows anything. You know, like that's just how they operate. And John Favreau has this stuff years in advance in terms of what he wants to do. You know,
True, true, but we'll see, man. I mean, you know, time and experience has taught me not to trust that Lucasfilm will actually, you know, commit to releasing what they say they will.
toxic
And
relationship.
after they announced, no offense to Daisy Ridley, but after they announced that Ray's coming back, I'm kind of counting on that they won't deliver. You know?
You're too nice. I want full offense down here at the bottom screen. I'm giving all the offense to her.
What?
Trash.
Bro,
She should
it
never act
was
again.
she was not supposed to be the main character.
I know she wasn't, and just now at this point, since look, guys, like, look, we've had a really bad few years. Giving us is not making us feel better. Give us something good. Okay, that's all I'm asking. I mean, do we have to plead? Does someone have to call in a bomb threat to make a point? At some point, it's like you need new stuff. Like you can't rely on the stuff that was written 50 years ago. I mean, hate to break it to everyone. Like it's not like there isn't stuff you can't talk about, and that's why I like the books and games because it's other things. Like, why do you have to rely on books and games to explore things you're afraid to do in shows or in
Yeah,
movies or any of that other stuff? It's like
yeah,
just trust in the guys you hire to get it done.
exactly, exactly. So let's get into it, man. Let's get into the nitty and gritty. What we're here to talk about today is one of the best Star Wars movies, period. Period. Star Wars Rogue One. You and I, we both love this movie.
Yes,
We both rewatched it. I mean,
yes,
now that you rewatched it, because when did it come out?
yes.
2016?
Something like that. Yeah,
2016. Ooh,
16, something like that.
2016. Yep. 2016. Now, 7 years later. It's crazy to believe that was 7 years ago.
I can't
Whew.
believe it.
7 years later, now that you've watched it,
Hmm.
has anything stood out to you differently than it did before?
Plot holes, but but let's just not get into that because it's not their fault, right? Because
Right.
there's a lot of connective tissue that haven't been connected, and it's trying its best to you know move.
That's something I brought up too, because I was like, that's what happens when you make new content and like two, three different timelines at the same time with the same characters.
It doesn't. It's really
It
hard
just
without
doesn't
having some
work.
kind of lapse, especially when you didn't have the same teams with continuity, keeping it in track, right? Like the
Yes.
thing that, not to get off track, but the reason why Marvel did so well for so long is because even though there was different time, like the movies spanned 15 years or so, right?
They had a plan.
There was at least a team that kept track of all the continuity.
Yep. Yep. But we all know that Lucasfilm doesn't care about continuity. Anyway, but
It's true.
I love this
Call
film.
a spade, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, man. But I love Rogue One. I always have since it first came out. I always tell people Rogue One put the wars back in Star Wars, man. And I remember it got a lot of it was pretty polarizing when it came out. It was like you either loved it or you either hated it. And then the people I feel like who hated it, I feel like they were kind of mad because it wasn't like the fantastical, you know, like monks with laser swords and mystical origins. It's just like, oh, you like that character? He died. Oh, they died. Oh, this is war, baby. Everybody died. Literally, everybody you care about in the movie dies. Spoiler alert.
Very few movies do that. Like 310
Yeah.
to Yuma, where
Oh,
Christian Bale's character dies at the end, type of thing. Like you can
love that
have a
movie.
good movie and have the plots. You can have the plot summed up really nicely, while the
Mhm.
hero, so to speak, dies. But in the end, you knew this was going to have to be going that way because what other alternative is there?
You had
Because
to. had an inkling because of in the New Hope, the movie that comes right after this one. They say a lot of Bothan spies had to die for this information. So you're like, that was like a throwaway line that they gave years ago, and then this
Not knowing what
movie,
a Bothan spy is, you have no
yeah,
idea what it is, right? You're just saying,
yeah,
oh, okay, whatever, something cool. And then they actually had to put some kind of context with it. My I think what stood out to me versus what I've before that I watched it is I like how the heroes in this movie are not they're not necessarily good people. Let's put it that way. I like that. It's very human.
yeah,
Like you're going into a human aspect, like, when you're having a revolution of any kind, like if you want to make changes, those changes usually come from someone or a group of people that are willing to do the really crazy, nasty things to get things done. And that does not require a good sense of character. It's just how it is.
yes, that's in my notes exactly. These characters feel like real people, as opposed to, I love Star Wars. I'm not knocking Star Wars, but the mainstream Star Wars movies usually have like archetypes of characters. You have the rogue,
Right.
you have the hero, you have the strong female warrior, or
Which the original movies did. Like the rebels were
yes,
pretty much good guys. And I'm like, okay, that's
yeah,
cool.
the
Well, that
ruffian,
I
stuff like that.
understand. Like I get it, right? Like that's what you had to deal with.
Yes,
People didn't want to deal with like real human thing, but now I guess the reason why it resonates with me so much is that you can connect with these characters. Like, you know what? I could do that. I could see myself not do that. I can see myself doing that given that situation. I
yeah,
guess, or you hope. I mean, I have. I have the capacity to do that. I've done it, but for the general, for most people who haven't done that, it's like, okay, you know what? I think I can. I would hope I can cross the line, but you don't know. And that's why Andor is so good, right? Not to get off subject so much that
that's
he didn't really
actually
buy
on
into it so
subject,
much. Yeah, you're like, oh, and then he kind of came along, and then you can kind of see how sanctimonious Andor is with, oh, you're not buying into this whole thing. It's like, bro, you had to get sold too. All right. So, you know,
Yeah, man, he was fighting it for a while, man. It's funny that you brought this up now. I was gonna bring this up later, but it's perfect to bring up now. Like, I put in my notes after watching this was like I see why Andor was the way to go when they wanted to make a show. There's something about him, like, he's holding on to a lot of crap basically,
well,
and
it's trauma too. It's like it's
that's the
normal
word,
stuff. Like,
trauma.
I
Yes,
mean, you, just living what he went through, right? That already shapes you as a person. Like, so he's already predicated with the foundation to act a certain way and be this kind of person. Just him existing and how he's lived. So it's only natural that he would have been rebellious up to this point. It
yes,
just took a concentration camp of him being in to get
yeah,
that, and that's what it is. Like anyone else who wants to argue with me, like you can look up the dictionary what a concentration camp is. Those prisons exactly that. So it's and
yeah.
one thing that I want to point out that I think Rogue One's done better than any Star Wars movie ever. They make the villains very sinister. Finally,
They
Star
make the
Wars
villains
movies are so
villains.
cheap in terms of
Yeah.
being like, okay, this guy's nasty and vicious.
Mhm.
It's like bad, like just evil. And when you see Emperor Palpatine in the original movies, you're like, okay, he's bad, he's old, it's got force lightning. But what did he do really that makes him bad? Prequels kind of touched on it in the third movie, but it was so forced that Anakin killed those kids. I'm like, so he went from loving his wife
To
to choking
killing
her out
kids.
and killing kids. And I'm like,
That
in
was
a
a very
matter of
quick turn.
15 minutes, there was no slash. Like, what kind of the thing that bothered me with that whole thing is like, okay, he's doing this for his wife. Okay, fine, whatever. He's going to kill a bunch of kids. I would do the same thing. I understand. But make it believable by not choking her out after he did all those nasty things. Or at least if he's going to do that, explain the reason why he did that is because of some inner projection things, like I did all this for you and you don't love me anymore type of thing. At least put that out there. And there wasn't any of that.
Yeah,
But
man. Yeah,
this
I
movie did a
mean,
good job with that.
we already established before, Lucas, he's a great story developer, but maybe not the best screenwriter per se. But yeah, I mean,
Per
let's just
se,
say we
you're
at
being
Nomad
nice.
Productions don't condone,
Dang.
harming of children. But like this dude like literally went from like, oh, I can show you how to save your wife. All you have to do is kill younglings. He's like, okay.
But
Like what? It's like, come on, bro, I
see,
need more.
Obi-Wan showed Darth Vader killing kids though.
Yes.
He
Yes.
physically forced something and they snapped the kid's neck like and dragged another one. So it's not like
I
you
mean, yeah, he
can't.
had it in it, but there was no reason the audience was given for that turn, besides the fact that he wanted to save his
No, there
wife.
wasn't any. I'm like, okay, you're doing this for your wife because you don't want her to die
Yeah.
because you have forced dreams. Okay, build on that, please. If you're gonna have this
Yeah.
fall, you got to make it believable. And there isn't any of that. Clone Troopers, fine, whatever. But Rogue One shows these villains, these Imperials, like they're nasty people, and the Imperials have this the Japanese Navy type of
Yes.
setup with they're all out for their own thing and there is really no cohesiveness or teamwork or any of this stuff for the common goal. It's however they can make themselves look good in front of the emperor, and that's what all the admirals and the Japanese fleet in World War II did, which is the reason why they lost a lot of the battles towards the end, because there was no teamwork,
Yes. They
there was
ate
no
each other
conferring with
from the
one
inside
another.
out.
Exactly. They're like, no, I want to make myself look good. And that's what your downfall was. And the Americans took advantage. And this is how the empire looks. It's a beautiful juxtaposition of the two.
It's like Krennic said when they blew up the city of Jeddah. He was like, "Oh my goodness, it looks beautiful." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, these guys are like
And then he
sociopaths."
was like, aren't I going to get credit? I'm like,
Yeah,
this guy
I just
wants his
blow this
love.
up. I want credit. I'm like,
I'm the one that
"What?"
built this thing. I kidnapped this dude to build this thing. I want the credit. You know what I
That's
mean?
that's wild. But like we were talking about Andor, like at the end, when the council decides not to fight, decides not to go and steal the plans, and then Cassian gathers all these guys up. He's like, "Look, I believe
Beautiful
you."
moment.
Yeah, beautiful. And like,
It's like,
movies
look, we're gonna
usually
die.
have those
We're dying.
speeches that's like,
Yeah.
"Yo, let's do this," and it's like a sanctimonious ceremonial thing,
No.
but
It's like, let's
they
go.
literally were just like, "Yo, I've been doing this since I was 6 years old. I've done things I cannot sleep over, and they just don't want to fight. Like, nah, like we're going to do this whether they like it or not." And I was just like, "Yo, this is amazing." It's like he says in that argument he has with her in the ship. He's like, "I've been in the rebellion since I was." No, he didn't say that. He said, "I've been
He said he's
fighting
been in
them."
this fight,
Yeah,
making
I've
this
been in
fight
this
since he was
fight
6.
since I was six
Which,
years old. He's like, all of a
yeah,
sudden the rebellion's real to you now. I was like, oh, I love that. I love that exchange between him
not
and her.
everyone can pick and choose when to care about
Oh,
something.
yes.
That's what he said.
I love that. And then she was like, "You can't talk your way out of this." And it's funny because she pauses,
Yeah,
and then
it's like, are you
her
really just said
demeanor
that to me? I'm like,
switches.
what?
Yeah,
How
her
dare
demeanor
you?
switches because she knows she has nothing to say back to him. So she says, "You
No,
can't talk your way out of
no,
this one."
dude, no.
And then he says, "I don't have to," and walks away. I'm like, what? Like, yo, the writing is amazing. Like, I
So
just can't get enough.
here's the thing, and this is the hot take for why you can make this argument it's the best movie. Now, Episode 5 forever has always been deemed the best one,
Top tier.
right?
Yep.
But
Empire Strikes Back, baby.
but can't is it, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, is it really, and I told you, it's like, look, it could be tied for one for me, and it's not recency bias, like that has nothing to do with it. It just
No,
comes down to like good old fashioned storytelling. You don't even need to like Star Wars to appreciate that movie.
exactly, bro.
Episode 5 is a little different. You need to have some pretext with
Yes,
4 and understanding Star Wars to really like it, right? I'm not
yes,
saying it's not good by itself, but it's episodic for a reason. But
yes,
Rogue One, I'm like, look, you watch this, you're like, oh dang, like you can tell who the bad guys. See, a basic story. You know who the villain is. You know who the good guys are, right? You see what the struggle is. You understand why when you see a giant space weapon blowing up a city, you're like, okay, I'm putting it together. I
Right.
don't need anything else. Just imagine the first movie you ever watch ever for Star Wars is a New Hope, is a Rogue One. You're like, okay, I can put all this together. And then finally, which is what everyone's been waiting for, besides Obi-Wan, Rogue One really shows Darth Vader as a sinister dude.
Rogue One holds my favorite scene of Darth Vader ever
I
to
don't
this
know.
day,
Obi-Wan's close for me.
and that was reshoots. Let's get that through y'all heads. That was reshoots. That Darth Vader scene at the end was not in the original script, and also it was supposed to be a lot more like gory. Well, not gory, but a
No,
lot
yeah,
more
there's
like violent. You know.
well, they should have made it more violent, but I understand why, but they need to. Is like, look, they haven't see that they talk about how Anakin's strong, powerful, all this stuff, but it's never showcased ever.
Yeah. They
It's
need
just
to
talked
show
about.
why. They need to show at this point he's so far gone so that when you go into episode 4, you're like, oh, this dude is far
Nasty.
gone. You need to think he's so far
Because
gone.
everyone's already got that fear of Darth Vader. How do you
Mhm.
build up? How do you actually show that? And the only
Yeah.
way you do that is just senseless violence and just a lack of any kind of like human
Humanity.
emotion and empathy.
You need
So
to
it's like,
show
look,
that so
make
that
it
in
violent,
episode 5 or 6, when Luke is trying to talk to his dad, you need as an audience to be like, bro, he's gone. What are you doing? You can't reach him.
but you don't have that. You know what I mean? You just hear of that story, right? In
Yeah.
episode 3, you're like, no, you don't see it, and that's why I like Obi-Wan because it shows that, right? Like it shows that side of like, okay, he's gone.
Yeah,
Like this dude
he's
is so
done.
angry and just he is just ready to just like kill anyone. And that's the beautiful part about it. And that's why I like Rogue One because it showed like, you know what? He's gone. Let's just and he's just going after these dudes. And that hallway scene, I'm like, dude, this dude's like cutting people up using the force to first off, everyone in that hallway knows they're dead, and you can see in their face, you're like, just get it through the door and
Yeah,
we'll give you enough time and then
yeah.
just eject.
Just
Like
take
that's
it,
such
take it. Yo,
dude,
like, holy crap,
it's like
bro!
as a
I
human,
rewinded that like 3 times to watch it.
as a person, you know, if you have to come to the realization that you're going to die no matter what you can do and you can't change it, like that's an awful moment,
Hmm.
right? And having that type of feeling or understanding that anyway, like I guess I can relate to it more and it's more powerful for me, but it's like you got no chance. There was like 20 of them in that hallway and it took them
That's why they
they
fought
had
so hard. They needed their deaths to mean something. They were like, "Yo, we got to get those plans. Even if I
well,
die, I got to slow this
otherwise
guy
those
down."
plans came up from the planet, right? And
Yeah,
everyone died
still.
on the planet, right? And then a few people escaped, but at that point the Death Star was already blowing everything up.
Yeah,
So it's like it's a two-phase sacrifice with the fleet, with it's giving them enough time to like, send the plans up. They send the plans up. The plans get sent off to someone and they don't even survive. They have enough time just to get it sent off to someone else with a hard copy, and then they get their shot, and then they get their ship, intercepted, and then you got episode 4. But no, it's so good. It's like good. You actually know, like, hey, the Empire's bad. There's no questioning it.
yeah.
I like that. Like episode 4 didn't do that. Stormtroopers could barely aim. That's not menacing. Like
Oh,
the
you would
new
see
age
them. They would walk into the
stormtrooper,
corridor. Ah!
the new age stormtrooper are like bad. Like it's believable. You know
Yeah,
what
I
I
want
mean?
to talk about that too because I made a little small note, a little nitpick. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about how the stormtroopers are more like badass. The stormtroopers actually look like soldiers in this movie. Not just the stormtroopers, all even the rebels look like guerrilla soldiers. The stormtroopers look
Yes.
like troopers because I get it. I get it. I know people are going to get mad at me for saying I know Star Wars is based off westerns where they're gunslingers and they still do it in the
Yeah, but
Mandalorian.
that's just an aspect of it because the other part is full of fascism and Nazi regime
Yeah.
and Soviet Union, all this stuff, right? Like thrown into one thing because when Star Wars was originally written, it wasn't that far removed from all of that.
Yes, yes, but like I like how in this movie everybody looked
Yes,
like real. It looked like real
real
warfare.
people. It's
People are
believable.
taking cover. They're
Yes.
they got real. Their guns look like real guns, like
Yeah, they're
futuristic
shooting.
guns, and they're
They're
shooting.
peeking over cover, shooting like
Yes,
it's an actual like real firefight versus
yeah.
just like spraying like it's
A lot of times in Star Wars movies and some of the TV shows, like the bad guys, like the troopers will just come out, they'll just run out. Whereas in this movie, people are like, all right, get over there, and they're like, bah, 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 they're like, they're holding their guns correctly, they're taking cover, they're doing tactics, like I'll cover you while you move to this side, or it looks like real warfare. What I'm saying, even the troopers, the way they march, the way they, the black, I forgot what they're called, but the black troopers that are
yeah, the
Krennic's
purge
personal guard.
troopers.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They they just seem scary. And then that one time
They
at the
have the
end,
voice scrambler, so when they're talking, you don't
yes.
understand what they're saying, but it's a voice
Oh,
scrambler, which means so no one understands what they're saying except for each other, which is beautiful
it's
because it shows that they're
crazy.
special forces.
Yes.
Here's the thing about
And
why
they
I
actually
think
killing people. You see them shooting. They don't miss. You
no,
see them.
no, they're trained. They're
Yeah,
trained
they're
to do this.
trained, man.
And that's why so this is why I think this is probably the most important piece of point that I want to make with this, right? The characters' deaths give you an emotional reaction, and it's
Oh yeah.
countless. Like as soon as the pilot dies, first one dies, right? Boom. Okay. And then as soon as I just watched a movie and I completely forget their names. The big guy with the machine gun,
Oh, I never know the guy with it. Do they
and then
ever
the
say
monk
his
who's
name?
blind.
But
No,
Chirrut,
they say his
Chirrut.
name.
They say
Kieran, thank you.
the blind guy who Donnie Yen plays is Chirrut.
Yeah,
I know
okay.
that.
So
Oh,
when they die,
Baze
base, thank
Malbus, the
you.
guy with the
Yes.
huge gun. Yeah.
When they die, I'm like, dang.
Oh, yeah, I feel that. I'm like,
I was
ooh.
like when he sees Kieran die, it's like, oh man. Like, and you like the two because you like the relationship, right? You want them to do
Yes.
well. You know they're gonna die.
Hmm.
And he was like, you know what? I'm gonna die. I'm gonna pray to get to the switch, and then I've succeeded, and that's that, right? And then Baze dies. I mean, I guess I have a reaction towards Andor and um what's her name?
I should know her name. Jin Ursa.
Jan, thank you. Jan Erso. They die. They die from the Death Star. It's not the same, because everyone dies from the Death Star blast, so it's not like it's like whatever, you know what I
Mm.
mean? But those like you actually get some kind of response where the older any Star Wars movie, you're like, oh no, like you don't feel that way, like about except for Han Solo dying in Episode 7, like which had a powerful response.
Oh,
Everyone else,
can we not talk about sequels trilogy?
well, I'm just saying, like I'm just using an example.
Yeah,
Besides
yeah.
everyone else, like I did not really have a response toward anyone else dying
Me
except for
neither.
those guys who wrote One,
Did
and
anybody else die
that's powerful.
in the other movies? I'm thinking of 4, 5, and 6. Did anybody else die besides Obi-Wan and Yoda? That was significant.
I mean, they didn't really die.
Yeah, nobody really died. I
They
don't
don't,
think.
they didn't die. I mean, they
Oh
did
yeah,
their
they didn't
thing.
die either. They're in the
No,
force.
because no, but like the pilots and when they're attacking the Death Star, you're like, okay, whatever, cool,
Yeah, to your point last time, you said like everybody knew they were gonna die when they signed up for this mission. It was literally a suicide
beautiful.
mission,
I love it.
and
It's great.
everybody knew that. And
Suicide missions sometimes need to be suicide missions. They shouldn't be like said there's suicide mission, everyone lives. That just
everyone
completely
lives at the
defeats.
end. They have a party with some Ewoks.
I'm like, no, there needs to be a lot of death. Like you barely win,
Like
and that's
literally
realistic.
everybody died, and like when Chirrut died, he was like, "It's okay. When you look at the Force, you'll see me," or something like that. I was like, "Ooh, damn." That was deep, son. Like, I was like, "Why are you gonna die, man?" Because he's really like the heart of the group, and you really feel when
Yeah,
he
he's the
dies.
glue that keeps it together, right?
Yes, and when he dies, his boy is just like, "Yo, it's a wrap. I'm killing everybody. Taking all y'all with me." He just goes and murks some of those troopers, those purge troopers, man. And it's the death the deaths are very like very emotional. But I feel like one death that's kind of underwhelming, if Rogue One is your first Star Wars film, or if you only go by the films, Saw Gerrera's death is kind of eh, eh.
I think it's because there wasn't a lot of fleshing out the character. Like you're not attached to him, but that's what I
Yeah,
like about the shows. Is like Clone Wars and Rebels, Bad Batch kind of touch on him a lot, and then if you play the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor, like you have an idea who he is, and you're like, this dude is the original one. He's the godfather of like the rebellion, pretty much, right?
yeah,
So
he's the OG man, the OG man,
uh,
and
I liked how they made him pretty much like Darth Vader, except he was able to keep his head,
yeah,
like his face. He was able to talk, but other than
yeah,
that, it's all the same. He was just as defeated.
as
He's like,
ruthless,
"What's the point? I've lost who I was," type of thing. And then he's like,
yeah,
"You know what? I'm just gonna die right here. This is
more
where I've been
more
at.
machine than man.
Yeah, it's great.
Because when you first meet, because I watched the shows just like you did, so his death has more meaning to me than the average Joe. So you see him as a young man at first, you see him and his sister, then his sister
And
dies.
an Onderon.
Yes, and then
Yes,
gradually you see him lose himself, and you see
yes.
him
Well, for good
lose his
reason.
humanity for good
Good
reason,
reason.
for
It
sure,
shows. I
for
mean, there's
sure.
explanations. Like there's an actual time. It's not. I'm not going to say timeline, but there's like a paper trail of him. Just like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I get it. Okay, yeah, totally. Like that makes total sense. And then you see this, you're like, this is the final result. You're like, oh yeah, okay. I would be too. It's kind of like being an adult, like in use another SpongeBob reference with Squidward. Like early on you're SpongeBob, later on in life you're Squidward, and you're like, man, I'll never see myself being Squidward, but here I am acting like Squidward every night. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
man. But I actually just remember what I wanted to say. You brought up when Cassian and Jin died through the blast. I just want to give a big shout out to the writers, Gary Whitta, Tony
mhm.
Gilroy. I think there's two others
Love
I'm forgetting.
Gilroy.
I'm sorry. And yeah, love Gilroy. Let's shout out to them for not forcing a half-baked romance at the end of a movie. Unlike
Star Wars romance are so bad.
unlike the sequel trilogy,
So bad.
if you
Like I think
compare,
pornos are more realistic with romance than Star Wars movie. I'm telling you, it's so bad.
oh my gosh, but no, you can't beat Rogue One's reality when it's like you
Oh
thought it
yeah,
was gonna
dude.
happen, it didn't happen, and I thank you for not going there. Unlike Ray and the other guy,
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren,
Call him Bob.
such a forced, such a forced romance that
That's so
made
weird.
no sense.
He's
That kiss
half
made no
naked and
sense.
they touch each other without being there. I'm like, what are we doing? I love Adam Driver. All
And
right,
his thing is like this high.
yeah, dude, he's
He's
got the midriff on, bro. He's
like he
my
just got out
boy.
the shower.
I
So
love Adam Driver. All right, I
yeah, I
love him.
love Adam Driver, but I'm like
You
Adam
know,
Driver, you're better than this, bro. You're better than this. Shout
the
out to
thing
you for
is,
being
the
Reed
thing
Richards
is,
in
he
Marvel.
could have been the best villain ever
Could
if
have,
they actually
yes,
just allowed him to do it.
yes.
And I don't think he should have been redeemed, personally.
No, no,
He should have continued the torch, not die. He should have
yes,
killed the emperors. Like, guess who's in charge? It's me, and I'm going to
yes,
be the one ruling this whole show.
yeah.
That should have been it. But I think they would have gone down that road
Had it
if
not been for,
it had J.J. Abrams and then Ryan Johnson, who I think had a stroke while writing it, and then J.J. Abrams again. I haven't heard Ryan
uh,
Johnson speak since he's made that movie, so I'm assuming he had a stroke and that's why it was so bad. I'm giving him that benefit of
no,
the doubt.
he went on like a whole like Twitter defending the movie for a few months, and he would pull stuff out of like the Jedi archives and stuff. But we're like, but still,
What?
bro, just because this exists in the lore, you still wrote a bad story. Like the story and the
It
character,
was awful. You know
it
what was the
just
best
didn't work.
part? You know
What?
what's the best part? It was
That
the best
fight?
fighting scene in the entire Star Wars universe
Yes.
when they were fighting the guards, the Praetorian guards. That was that.
Yeah.
That was it.
Even though
All
you
right.
can still see some guards waiting in the background for their time, and then they're like, "Oh yeah." Still, it was still a great fight scene. I'm very critical of fight scenes. I'm sorry, but it was still a
Not
great fight
everything's a
scene.
Bruce Lee moment when he's fighting 10 guys at once. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, I know.
there's maybe sometimes fight scenes, you know this too, it gets too busy and it's just, I don't, what am I watching?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
man. Yeah, for sure.
But that's the only good part of that entire movie. Everything else,
I know.
it's
It's
like,
just,
I'm like, what are we watching?
and Disney Plus keeps trying to suggest it to me, and I'm like, I'm good. I've seen it once. I'm good.
I've seen it twice. I
Actually,
don't
I've
need to
seen it
see it
twice
again.
because my wife bought it for me one day.
I saw episode 9 once.
I've seen it
I'll never
once.
I'll never see it again.
Once. I will never watch. First of all, it doesn't have any good fight scenes anyway. I will never watch that movie.
The
Like you said, he
music,
shouldn't have been
the
redeemed.
only part I would watch is when Rey, for whatever reason, gets blessed and has all the Jedi talk to her.
Oh,
That's cool.
that was
And
dope.
then
That
the
was dope.
Duel of Fates music,
And you could hear different Jedi like Qui Gon Jinn. You could hear Mace Windu. You could
canon
hear
from
Ahsoka.
Rebels,
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. And but
which they need to bring him as a real character.
yes, for sure. But that movie is horrible. Shouldn't exist. Neither should number eight. But
How
like you
would you
said,
feel? I'm curious. Let's just say they scrap Rey because it could happen. How would you feel if Cameron Monaghan was the face of Star Wars? He jumps from a game to the actual live action, which is going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind that's not going to happen.
I'd be disappointed,
And why
and
is
I'll
that?
tell you why. Because it would mean we're still in the same timeline. I'm tired of all these
Kind of.
characters. I'm tired.
But they, see,
Just
the thing is,
move the
you can
timeline.
talk about other like storylines that are not in that, the Republic fall to the Empire type of thing, right? But for him, like, I think he's as relatable as anyone, and it's very human. And that's the beautiful thing about the games. It's like it's so well written. You're like, like, come on, what are we doing? This is the most relatable Jedi in the entire universe, I think.
It's probably because his master died when he was young, and he actually
He
got to
saw he got
live life.
murdered right in front of him.
Yeah, he actually
He
got to
was
live life.
13. Yeah,
We
kind
talked
of
about offline how the Jedi Order was just not always in the right.
sanctimonious.
Yes, they took children from their parents at a young age, and I'm like, they took them. They didn't steal them. They agreed with the parents, and I'm like, the parents agreed to this. But then you watch some of the shows, like the animated shows, and you see how they would like kind of coerce the parents. Like your
He was like,
child
"No, your
is
kid's
force
gifted." Blah
sensitive.
blah blah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna invite all these villains. You should let them come with us so we can train them so that they'll be safe and you'll be safe. I'm like, yo, you kind of, that's kind of messed up.
Here's the I don't mind them talking on it as long as there isn't just a constant, like, I don't
I'm tired of this
I
saga.
the
Tired
constant
of the
like
Skywalker
Anakin
saga.
reference, like that's that Skywalker, like you can talk about like that timeline, like that's
Yeah,
fine
just talk
because
about
there's
it.
so
That's
many other
fine.
things. Like having stories about it, like that's cool. Like you can have them in there because you have to see like everyone was affected by the Empire rising in
Yes.
completely different ways. And you really want to show that, like, you really hammered home the whole Darth Vader thing. Okay. And that's why I like the Cal Kestis storylines. Like, okay, he pops up for 5 minutes, it's powerful, and then he gets away, and that's that.
Right.
Both times. It's great. And he has a de facto master that he's got to, work with, and then I know you haven't really played the game, but just to give you an idea, like the game's based in Jeddah too, so there's ties in
Mm.
with Rogue One, which is why I'm talking about it. And I was thinking like, okay, so when are these characters going to come through, and you actually can start seeing these different interconnections? I'm like, it's a matter of time when they're actually like brought together. It really is. It's kind of like what they're doing with Mandalorian and Rebels, right? They've mentioned three very Rebels things that Ezra is going to be live action. It's just a matter who's going to play Ezra, which I don't know.
They already showed Zeb in season 3 of Mandalorian, and he looks great.
Yeah, and what's her face? What's her name? Mandalorian teenager from Rebels, crazy hair. She's colorful
Oh,
hair. What's her
Sabine.
name?
Sabine.
Sabine. Thank you. They already got promos of her,
Yeah, yeah, and
right?
then
So
the green chick, I forgot her name, the Twilight.
she's
She's
already in
gonna
there.
be in.
She's already been mentioned.
She's in
She's
the trailer for Ahsoka. Her and
yeah,
Sabine.
and she was in Bad Batch. Talked about her when she was young and explains why she is the way she is. I thought that was nice, right? And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
that's cool.
and technically she's in Rogue One. They have her call sign in Rogue One.
Oh
Remember?
yeah, yeah.
Remember her ships in the final assault on Scarif. So I was like, that's pretty cool. I do want to bring up one thing that we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, man, watching this movie and the VFX, besides the Princess Leia showing up at the end, VFX
Awful.
are solid, solid, bro.
Because
Even
the guy who
Tarkin
plays
is pretty solid.
Tarkin, well, he's been dead for 10,000 years, but I mean,
He looks like. But
dude, great character. How would you recast him? Like, I understand the predicament they were in. Like, how do you recast a guy like that? Tell me.
yes, you don't, and it worked because they knew that they wanted to do that from the beginning, right? So they were working on that technology from jump. And if you watch it, from a like
Even better
technical
now.
filmmaker aspect, you can see how they would conceal some of the imperfections with just harsh lighting on one side of his face, shadows. I mean, from an artistic point of view, that's cool because it shows how sinister and how shadowy he is. But also for a technical CGI uh, technique that also gives you less to work with, so the effect is more believable. He has harsh lighting on one side of his face. He has shadows all over. And it works. Every you could tell every shot was planned. Nothing was like Marvel where they're like, oh, just throw this shot in there, and then he looks wonky for a second. No, Lucasfilm has this beauty of even in their shows, they just have great CGI and it works all the time. I mean, we just talked about Zeb, who showed up in Mandalorian 3, a TV show.
You look great.
He looked phenomenal. I was in awe because one, that's
I'm
Zeb.
like, wait a minute. I know that guy with the mad
Yeah.
Australian accent. I'm like, I know this dude.
And two, he looked phenomenal. And
Believable.
everything in this,
Believable.
yes, believable. And everything in this movie looked, besides Princess Leia, looked amazing. And I was just in awe. I'm like, this still holds up in 7 years. And this
So
is,
let's just say Ben Moldison, who
mhm,
played Krennic,
yeah.
fantastic actor. I love him. By the
Oh yeah,
way,
I love him too, man. He's
dude,
great.
jeez, if I was going to make a movie and I wanted a villain, he's going to be in there. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Hey,
Uh,
what are you doing this weekend, bro? I need you. Like this guy, he usually plays villains, but it's amazing. Like he's so good, and he just soaks up the scene. Like I don't want credit. Like he's just so
So I got to
good.
ask you. So we've talked about how Rogue One could be better. So you think Episode 5 is better than Rogue One? I know this.
I don't know, bro. I don't know. I think the older I get, the more Rogue One is like, like
What does Episode 5 do better than Rogue One then?
Episode 5. Yeah, I was gonna say the hopelessness, but literally everybody dies in Rogue One.
Well, there's no hopelessness. There is a quick, I guess, coming to terms with your fate. So there's no hopelessness because you're just playing with house money until you die. Like that's how it works. I'm serious. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not the same. Like, all right, you're against all odds. You're dying. You come to terms with it, and that's that.
Right, right, right.
5, you're hoping, okay, maybe we can survive and kick the can down the road just a little longer. And
Yeah.
it just feels like the Empire is just everywhere. It's just
Mm,
very like, can they get a break for just a minute? You know, that's what it feels like.
yeah,
I think what episode 5 does better than anything is he every scene leads to another scene and it all makes sense. It's like linear. The linear storytelling is perfect and it's flawless.
whereas
There's no
Rogue One,
questions
there
for
was a lot of
anything.
planet hopping in the beginning of Rogue One.
You're like, what's who's this?
Yeah,
Who's this? Who's this? You
yeah,
know? Like what's but with episode 5, you're like, okay, I know everyone. I know
yeah,
who this guy is. I know who this guy is. I
mm,
know. So from the beginning of the movie, you know what the directive is. It's this. Luke goes on his own path, which makes it great, right? There's two different things going on at once. Luke goes on his own thing. Han does his own thing.
right,
They come back together, and then they circle back in and opens up with 6, right? So it's
yeah.
like that's why I like it so much. I think that's what it does better than anyone than the other movies. I think.
Mm. I think I like Rogue One so much because the stakes are real and the stakes deliver. A lot of times, like you said earlier, a lot of these times people will be like, we're going on a suicide mission, but everybody comes out and then everybody has a party with some Ewoks and everything's fine. But Rogue One was like, yo, we know we're going to die, but we're going to
No,
do this
there's
anyway.
real consequences to it.
And guess what? That's what happened. Everyone died. But at the end of the day, the good guys still had a win. They didn't win, but they got a win. They got the plans out so that in the long run, you know, in episode 4, the Death Star could be blown up and everybody rejoices and has a party. I really like how in Rogue One, like we said earlier, the characters feel like real characters, as opposed to in like episode 5, characters are playing a character. I'm the rogue, I'm the hero, I'm the senator, I'm this, I'm that. But
Mm-hmm.
in Rogue One, you can tell these people have been through hell. Everybody's doing something. Everything that everybody's doing is because, like, man, the Empire really screwed up my life too. Oh, for real? Yeah, let's get together. Let's do this. Bang, bang, bang. Like the Chirrut and
Which
and
Andor made
Baze.
it so great. That's why you're like, dang.
I know. I know, man. We might have to do a whole thing just on each episode of Andor. But yeah, like Baze and Chirrut were guardians of the Jedi Temple. Baze was considered the greatest, most loyal guardian of the temple, and then they were turned into beggars who just caused trouble whenever they could. And then they run into these rebels and they're like, "Hey, we're going to join you and
They have
actually do
purpose
something."
again.
Yeah, they have purpose again. That's why at the end he's like, "Good luck, little sister." It's like, "Oh, you gave me my purpose." You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's kind of wonderful, it's kind of nice, it's kind of great to see this. And I guess I got to lean towards Rogue One. This might be a hot take.
Probably the best female protagonist in all of Star Wars. Yes.
Yes, this is how you write a female character. You feel me?
Obi-Wan does that well with Mon Mothma too. I will give them credit.
You mean Andor? You
No, it
said,
does. Oh, Andor, excuse me.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yes, yes. Maybe we just got to give all credit to Tony Gilroy, man. You know, um,
Maybe he knows how to write like good, compelling characters, and he doesn't have to like check all these boxes to make sure that women get their due. Because for an operation like this, like obviously women are a huge part of it. It's not just some kind of like sausage fest, but Tony Gilroy doing like Andor is like he really nailed homes like the Mon Mothma thing. Like it didn't have to be action. Like it's cool. It's just a lot of talking. Like a lot of that espionage stuff was just,
but it was so good. Just
dude.
the
I'm like,
talking was
dang man.
so good. With Stellan Skarsgård. I'm sorry, I'm running off tangent talking about
No,
Andor.
not at all. Because this is.
Stellan
But I'm serious
Skarsgård
though.
and
Like this. Why can't this be a rest? If you're going to continue doing the Rebellion and the Empire like storylines, okay, that's
just let
fine.
Tony Gilroy do it if that's
Have
going to
him
be
do
the
the
case.
rest of this
I
whole thing.
Jeez.
half of because he knows how. For some reason, he seems like the only writer ever employed by Star Wars to actually know how a man and a woman talks to each other.
Yo, you're so right. You're so
I'm
right.
like, dude,
Especially after
because
the season that we got with Mandalorian season 3. Yes. Oh my gosh.
so not to get off topic, all right. So I was playing Resident Evil 4 remake few weeks ago, a month ago, right?
Right.
I'm playing. Heather overhears Leon say something to whoever, and
Hmm.
he's like, "Do most teenage boys emulate what these guys say to women, and that's why they say the crazy stuff they do when they're older?" I'm like, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's the only frame of reference. He was like, because it doesn't work. I was like, you sure? It's so
I
bad.
got
It's like,
you. Oh man. Dunk. Gotcha.
nah, no, but you're right. But no, it's the most human element for it. And I feel like, especially now when things just get tough, people ask themselves, like, if you're put in a situation that's something that's crazy, it's like the telltale sign of, like during the Holocaust, like, would you have stood up against the Nazis? Like, when people ask them, like, oh, definitely. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. Don't even lie to yourself. And it's the same thing. Like, would you have stood up to the Empire? Most people would say yes. And there's like no way in hell you would. All
Yeah,
right.
Andor is a perfect example of that, of what you
Yes,
just
it's
said.
realistic. People are like, oh,
Yeah.
and then you judge them. It's like, why? It's survival. You do whatever it takes to survive. The very few
Yes.
people who fight for, the other end, it's like they have something not right in their brain, or they did, or something happened in their past. Like, that's the reason why they are the way they
Yes.
are. It's
Yes.
not a normal thing.
Exactly.
But that's just
Exactly. They're
me.
just past the point of return that it's like, because some people fear if they rebel, they won't see the fruits of their labor. You know, it takes those people who are just like, I don't care if I don't. Oh, mm, mm, mm. I gotta get off topic again with Andor. When Stellan Skarsgård character, I think it was the last episode, who said,
Yes,
"I'm fighting for a sunrise that I will never see."
it's
Bro,
beautiful.
bro, if I, yo,
You know,
it's
so I'll give
amazing.
you I'll give you a comparison. This is very cheesy, right? It
Right.
took over 500 years to build Notre Dame, right?
Hmm.
So the original guy who started it was never ever going to see it. Obviously, the first 9 of them never saw it. There was like 10 of them, I forget, right?
Right.
But the fact that you had knowing that you were not going to finish this before you were dead, and then you were just trusting the next person was going to be able to do it, is just such a powerful thing. And that's what
Yes.
he's doing. He's just trusting the process, where he's like, you know what, whatever I'm doing today, I hope someone else just picks it up and does it tomorrow.
Wow, bro. That's why I just need more of that. I mean, like we said, Tony Gilroy, take the reins, do the rebellion. I know some people are going to give pushback. I've heard this. This is a nitpick. I've heard people say, "Ah, Tony Gilroy clearly doesn't care about aliens. Star Wars is about aliens, and his shows and movies only have humans." And I was like, come on, man, that's kind
What are
of
you
a
talking about?
nitpick
You had to
because
get one
there's
of the
not a
Mon
lot of
Calamari and Rogue One, who was a
Rogue
badass,
One
by the
had the
way.
most aliens as opposed to the show Andor, which had like it was basically just humans. And I was like, I don't care. Have you seen this writing? Have you seen this acting? I mean, Andy Serkis, Stellan Skarsgård, Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. Like these people are killing it,
Low
man.
key sexy, by the way.
Now with that Mon Mothma hairstyle, I'm glad they didn't give it to her in Andor because I'm like,
Telling you right
what?
now,
What is with
woman
that
with the
hair?
Hillary look, bro. I'm telling you.
What is with you mentioned it? Star Wars has the worst romances. Star Wars has the worst hairstyles as well, man. Right? Like,
So,
come on,
not to
man.
go completely off, but I was going to ask you this anyway before we start talking about this.
Hmm.
What would Daisy Ridley have to do to salvage her reputation with Star Wars, especially with this new project? For
I
you,
think, I think, uh, I think. What's his name? I just had a brain fart, and we just talked about him. Hayden Christensen. I think Hayden Christensen is the blueprint of how you come back. Um,
you can tell he had skill, right? Like you could tell in episode 3 and other movies, she has never showcased skill ever.
Well, the problem with her character, and this might be a problem with writing the way they write female characters now, is that her character didn't have growing pains. Rey was just the most powerful Jedi ever, and we were just supposed to accept that. Like she was just born that way. Like she didn't have to work for it. She didn't have to struggle. I mean, you have Rey in episode 8 arguing with Luke Skywalker on what he should do. First of all, Luke Skywalker, you know, people still talk about how that was a clone of him and not the real one because that's the only way they can justify watching that movie. But that just shows like her character didn't have to work. It's like a Superman syndrome. One of the reasons why Superman is not my favorite character is because he doesn't have to work for the powers as he has. I'm more of a Batman guy because he actually trains for years and becomes the greatest detective, becomes the greatest fighter. But yeah, that's the issue with Rey. Whereas you know, Hayden Christensen talked about in an interview how he felt like he didn't deserve the fame he got. And so he, after Star Wars, he just went into the ether. And then he said if he felt like something was right, he would come back. And that's what it took was good writing, good material for him to come back. You know, I criticize Obi-Wan, but what they did do right was the relationship between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader and the
The
sinister
writing, the
nature
dialogue writing,
of
and all that stuff was fine.
mm,
Just the questionable storylines was the
yeah, the
issue.
story beats and the storylines. Yes, you have a
That's the
little
issue.
girl outrunning grown-ups for 3 different scenes. I know I keep bringing it up, but it's just you know.
So Daisy Ridley for you, in order for her to salvage, has to. But the thing is, I think it's so irredeemable for me.
uh,
Right. Here's the thing. Like, look, you're the movie guy, and I'm just the consumer. But for me, right, and every other person for the most part, one, you need someone who can act, someone who's kind of attractive, doesn't look like Rosie O'Donnell's ex, right? And is actually fun. This lady's got more person. I'm actually even going to go there. I'd rather have Tukey and Sam play her.
Look, man. I mean, there is such a thing as a character being irredeemable, but
She is. Well, I think it's her because, like, I'm sorry, I got to sit up. So, did you ever see the Murder on the Orient Express?
no,
Okay, she was in there.
I
Okay,
know, I know.
I'm like, I'm watching this movie, good so far, and I'm like, what is she doing in here? Seriously, like Taylor Swift acts better than her, and Taylor Swift isn't even an actress. I'm like, what the heck is she doing? Like, I feel like she acts like she's got so much Botox to her face that she can't even move her facial muscles. I'm like, lady, what are you doing? And I know it's not just Star Wars. All right, and J.J. Abrams agrees. That's why he told her she was the worst actress he's ever seen.
Oh, you
To
said
her
that?
face. Yes, that's why I made her cry. He was like, "You're the worst actress I've ever seen."
But he personally hired her.
That's a Star Wars thing.
He said
They
that
picked nobodies, and he told her that on set, and she started to cry.
he said she was the only one who auditioned who could cry on command for that
That's
scene
the only
where
redeemable
they
part.
torture
But why?
torture
Well, it's crying for what? Like, why do you have to write about a woman character where she has to cry? Like, why does that have to be part of the?
for the torture scene or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's wild. Saying that to somebody who you hired, who you auditioned multiple times, because it's not like she auditioned once. You got to go through rounds and rounds of auditions. You called her
So
back, you
bad,
called her back.
so
So
bad.
I'm like, what do you do? Maybe he did that because, like we said before, she was not supposed to be the main character. It was supposed to be Finn, and then Lucasfilm shifted it after the movie
What's
or
the
during the movie.
actress who played Jyn Erso? I'm gonna hate myself as soon as you say her name because I know
Felicity
Felicity
Jones.
Jones. Yes, she could do it. She could have done it.
Yeah, and
She would have been fine.
to your credit, when I was watching Rogue One again, I was like, why? I know Jyn Erso died, but I'd rather Jyn Erso come back from the Force than I would want Rey to come back. Like Like I don't know, man. I don't know. But to wrap it up, what is your verdict? Rogue
On
One
what?
or Empire Strikes Back?
Rogue One.
Dun 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 dun. Dun. Rogue One, baby. You heard it here. We said Rogue One is better than Empire Strikes Back.
Don't shoot me.
Hate us, love us, we don't care. This has been the no matter Bitcast. Be creative, my nomads. Peace. Watch Rogue One and then watch episode 5 and say we're wrong.
Mhm.
Peace.